Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining us today for our next generation of Dynamics NAV webinar. I'm super excited to share out lots of interesting ideas. Met with a lot of customers over the past few weeks talking about these concepts. It's something that really needs to have some time dedicated to kind of walk you through, because I'm sure you're hearing that word D365 BC or D365 Business Central. So we thought, the team at Encore, we thought it would be a great idea to have a webinar to make sure that you understand these words and these concepts and what it really means to you as an organization and how we're going to bring value to you throughout that process. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about Dynamics NAV and the new name and what that means to you, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about it technically. Then we're going to be going in and having a great presentation from Aaron on Microsoft 365, our One Microsoft demo. And then Rico's going to take us through the new enhancements over the past few versions, including the newest version, which is D365 Business Central. So again, it's a new name. NAV has not gone away. It's just been rebranded under this umbrella. I'm sure you've seen a lot of information about D365 in general, and D365 Business Central, or D365 BC, is now the new branded name for Dynamics NAV, which was Navision. For those of us that have been around for a while, we know we've come through those different iterations. So talking about that solution, for the clients that are already using Dynamics NAV, you can have D365 Business Central on-premise. It is also offered as a subscription base. It's also often offered in the cloud, so that's SaaS model. So those are the three different types of deployments for D365 BC. And we can upgrade to Dynamics 365 Business Central on-premise, and it is a bridging of licensing models. It's a license migration transition upgrade. That's a long name, but definitely, for short, we call it an LMT upgrade, and we can walk you through that upgrade process, and that's part of this webinar today. In order to take advantage of the newest release of Dynamics NAV or D365 Business Central, you have to be active on your enhancement plan. One of the changes is the types of licensing. Not sure why I did. Oh, sorry, go back. We're missing what part of the slide. That's right. So our licensing in our current environment under Dynamics NAV Perpetual, we have something called a full use user. And we also have limited use users, and we have employee self-service users. So in our new model, we've got basically full use users, and they're going to be named, and there's also team members. So team members would be comparable to our limited use user in the past. And so those team members have that kind of read access, and full users have that read and write capability, and they're named. So in your current model, you have perpetual concurrent licensing, and that's going to move to basically a named user license. Thanks, Rico. So what does this mean for you? Well, you've got choice. Again, if you were on NAV 2018, or maybe you're on an earlier version of Dynamics NAV, NAV 2018 is supported until October 2027. So again, you've got choice. No one's saying that tomorrow you have to go to D365 Business Central. And that moving from a concurrent to a named user once you do change your licensing model. So let's talk about the different options that existing customers have. Microsoft continues to develop and enhance on-premise solutions. So again, that on-premise solution is not going away. As we discussed earlier, we respect customers who want to make their own decisions when it makes sense for them. And maybe they do want to move to the cloud. Maybe they want to remain on-premise. So again, it's all about that choice. So when you're ready, we want to be able to walk you through what that process would look like for you. And again, you've made that investment. Microsoft respects that investment, and they want to continue to support you and move you forward through those new versions of D365 Business Central. So this visual kind of shows you currently, if you're on NAV 2018 or lower, you had that starter pack, extended pack, you've got your full use users, limited users, and you have objects. When we go into this D365 world, again, we've got now this Essentials pack, Premium pack, team members, and objects. And again, that's D365 on-premise, or it could be subscription. When we move to the SaaS offering, which is D365 in the cloud, you have your users, which are essential or premium users, and team members. You no longer have access to the objects. And Tony's going to be talking a little bit more about that as well. Again, you've got that ability to transition from Dynamics NAV to D365 Business Central on-premise, which would be basically exactly like what you have now, Dynamics NAV on-premise. Or you can go and move to D365 Business Central in the cloud. So you've got options for staying on-premise, or you can transition to that cloud. So that's a little overview about what it means from a licensing perspective. Moving from Dynamics NAV, whether 2018 and below, to Dynamics 365 Business Central. And I'm going to pass it over to Tony.
Thanks, Tracy. That was great. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the different versions of Business Central that are available today, and the features from a technical standpoint that are available to you depending on the version of Business Central that you would deploy. The two versions of Business Central that are available from Microsoft as of October 1st would be Business Central on-premise, or Business Central as a service, a SaaS offering. Business Central on-premise would be installed exactly the same as you would install NAV today. You bring the wizard up, you click, next, finish. It's really that easy. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but you get the idea. It's an installation that's done on your servers, or in a data center, or on something like Encore's cloud offerings. Business Central software as a service, Microsoft will spin the application up and provide you a tenant, and you would engage with the application the same as you would do, say, Outlook in a web browser, or Word in a web browser, or the one that I like to use, if we all remember back there, was Hotmail. The way you interact with those is via the web browser. You don't install the application locally. And that's exactly the same as the experience you would get if you're doing Business Central software as a service. There are some other differences, and they are highlighted here on that slide. So licensing, Tracy talked a little bit about that, on-prem and subscription versus SaaS when you're in the SaaS version. Installation, I talked a little bit about that. So you can do it on-premise on your own servers if you have them, or you can do infrastructure as a service as well. So that could be through a third-party IT provider with a data center, or Encore also offers an IaaS solution whereby we'll install the software on some cloud servers for you and maintain and manage those, so you don't have the cost of managing the servers. It's all included in our monthly fee. When you go to the SaaS offering, there's no servers to install. It's just accessing the application in a web browser. Clients that are available to you would be on-premise. You still have the Windows RTC as we know it. Today, we'll talk a little bit about that in the roadmap, which is coming up. You have the web client as well as the universal app. With the SaaS version, as I mentioned, mainly the web client, but the universal app will also install and connect to your Business Central SaaS offering. One thing with the universal app is it's basically a wrapper around the web client, so it just makes it easier to access and available as an app, but it's effectively the same experience as you would have on the web browser. And lastly, the administration levels. So when you do your BC on-prem, you're able to still access SQL as you do today with your NAV on-prem installations. You can go to the developer environment and you can pull up the object designer and make changes there. You can do the service tier administration tool, so you can go in there and make changes to your service tiers or turn them on or off. It's exactly the same as you do with a NAV installation today. But obviously with the SaaS offering, Microsoft is managing and controlling that. You don't have access to it in the back end. So that's the differences on the administration level. Moving on to the roadmap that Microsoft published in October. We now have one common name moving forward, which is going to be Dynamics 365 Business Central. Microsoft are going to offer the on-premise as well as the cloud offering for the foreseeable future. We have no talk of removing on-prem. Microsoft is looking to maintain that for life. However, there are some changes that are coming up in 2020 that can have a little bit of an impact on the decision to move to Business Central. So the first would be, you can see the modern clients there. What Microsoft means by that is that they're going to remove the Windows client for any Business Central on-prem releases after 2020. So all versions released up until that point will still contain the Windows client, but from 2020 onwards, the Windows client will be deprecated. At the same time, Microsoft is not going to allow you to go into the Object Designer and make modifications directly into Microsoft's code, which has been a pretty big foundation of the NAV product up until now. What that does is, and we'll get into a little bit more detail about what that looks like, but what that does do is provide faster and quicker and as a result, less expensive upgrades, but it does require your development to be done in a different style than you do today. Of note here would also be that the one Dynamics 365 Business Central product, the code base is identical between on-prem and in the cloud. Now, you might get some features in the cloud that are connected to Office 365 that are a little harder to connect on-prem, but in terms of NAV or Business Central features functions, they are identical in the cloud or on-prem. It is the same code base. We'll talk a little bit about this development piece, because I know that's a big part for our existing clients who have had customizations made to NAV. And what does that look like moving forward? Well, Microsoft has moved forward with this concept of eventing and extensions. So if we look at the classic way of doing NAV development, all your modifications were made in line with Microsoft core code. That allowed us to modify as well as remove existing code and obviously add on top of the Microsoft product. This allowed tight customizations, but made it very, very hard to do version control. It also meant that when Microsoft was to release cumulative updates or hot fixes, we would have to merge the code and spend time merging that code to make sure we didn't lose your customizations, as well as when doing other add-ons. And in particular, when doing an upgrade to a new major release, there was the requirement to merge the customizations that clients had invested in into the newer version of NAV. In the screenshot on the right-hand side, you can see I've kind of added a message releasing sales document, and we can see that that's directly in that code unit 414 release sales document, which is a Microsoft object. The change I've made is directly in line with MSFT core code. In Business Central, we use this eventing method. So what you now have is a separate layer to the Microsoft core code, as well as other add-ons or other partner developments. What this means is there's no merging for us to do with Microsoft or ISV updates. So if you have a cumulative update, you can apply that without having to merge the code. Obviously, we still recommend doing a little bit of testing to make sure that there's no changes from Microsoft that are impinging on your use of Business Central. But it does make it a lot easier because we don't have to check to make sure it's not overriding customizations. So what that means we can do is apply cumulative updates as well as do upgrades quicker and cheaper. It's also giving us the ability to do source control because we can take all of our modifications separate to the Microsoft code and store them in products like TFS and GitHub. Unfortunately, there is no upgrade tool for Classic to eventing, so we do have to go through a bit of a manual process to move existing customers onto the AL, as they call it, or the eventing style. There are some PowerShell scripts that can help us get there a little bit more efficiently, but there is no tool that does an automatic transition of existing Classic development to AL, so there is some time to be spent doing that transition. There are limited events that are available, but Microsoft is adding more and more every month with the releases they're doing for Business Central. And the other thing is we cannot change or remove Microsoft or ISV logic. We can only add to it. So as a result, sometimes we have to get creative in how we're approaching a modification. The projects that we've been doing, and we've been doing AL development now on all our new implementations for the last 3 months, we very rarely run into an issue of having to modify existing Microsoft code. And when we have, when we thought creatively about it, we've been able to find ways around it. So this hasn't stymied us at this point. What this eventing allows us to do is create apps, and apps are what you get published into your Business Central product. Microsoft has created a public app store, a little bit like what you would have on your phone, your Google Play Store or your Apple iTunes Store. ISVs and add-on providers are able to create and publish apps out to the App Store. And you're able to go into and pull down those apps and install them into your application without having any worries about it interfering with the underlying Microsoft code or your partner's kind of modifications. And what that means is you can basically try things out on a test environment and see if they work for you or not. And if not, you can simply unplug them and move on and try something different. There is no merging, but there is the concept that they do have to use eventing when they're creating those apps, so that development style that I showed you a little bit earlier. And the way that we do modifications specifically for a customer, bespoke customizations, is we actually create apps, and they're called private apps, and we install them into your environment. Nobody else gets them. We don't have to put them on the App Store for you to access them. The App Store is really for the more publicly based ISV add-ons. And so we really like the idea of the App Store. It's showing a lot more kind of add-ons from a global standpoint that perhaps we weren't aware of before. And also great that we can try them out and remove them. So if it doesn't work, we're not stuck with that app. We're able to take it out of the system and try something else or go in a bit of a different direction. So we're definitely very excited about the progress that Microsoft is making with these new development tools.
Tony, we didn't have a slide about this, but just maybe you can have a quick overview for a client who's, say, on NAV 2013, 2015,
Yep.
and they're thinking about doing that license migration
Yep.
and upgrading to D365 Business Central. What does that mean for them?
Yep. So a couple of different options. The first is you can go on to Business Central on-premise today with your customization exactly the same as it is, so not converting it to the AL style of development. And that's going to be supported if we look at that roadmap until 2020. And after 2020, those customizations would have to be AL. As a matter of just how we procedurize our upgrades today, when we do upgrades for any customers to the newer version of NAV 2018 or Business Central on-prem, where we're able to, as part of the merging, easily move those customizations to that eventing style, we're doing that anyway. So we're kind of slowly moving our clients there as part of our procedures and our processes anyway. For the areas that are not able to easily migrate to AL, we would have to spend some time investigating how we would migrate those to the AL model. But as part of the upgrades today, we're inherently moving the things that are easy, low-hanging fruit, this is the best way of describing it, to that eventing model, so that as clients progress through the different versions, it's not going to be a sudden cliff that they face.
Great, thank you. I also forgot to mention too on one of my slides is that when we move from NAV or Dynamics NAV to D365 Business Central, it moves from that concurrent user base to a named user. And if you're an existing customer of NAV, you actually get 2 named users for every concurrent user that you have currently. So again, that will be a benefit in that change of that license model. So you don't have to worry about, oh, now it's a named user. How does that impact me as a business?
Perfect.
Okay, I think Aaron is up next.
Aaron is up next.
Perfect. You guys can hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you, Aaron.
Okay, great.
And we can see the screen. Yeah.
All right, just before we dive into the demonstration, I wanted to give you a bit of an overview as to what we'll be ultimately showing today in the variety of different technologies that are now tied together largely through Office for your Business Central applications. So just give me 1 second, I will get that going and hopefully you can see there. So really what we're talking about in the far left is a completely cloud-based solution that is in many respects device and browser independent. So Business Central software as a service version can be run on Edge, Explorer, Safari, Dolphin, Firefox, Chrome, you name the browser, and likely you'll be able to run the application. Similarly, when you go to the various stores for either Apple or Google, you'll notice that they do have a Business Central application that you can download from each of those stores in order to effectively get the application on your tablet or mobile device. So from that perspective, you can run it on any different piece of hardware you're looking at as well. Ultimately, it uses the concept of a universal client. So any changes that you make to the personalizations that you do within the core application on any of those platforms largely permeates throughout any other device or application that you're looking at using in order to access Business Central. So it really is one center point, and you get that same consistent user experience no matter how you decide you want to consume that information. There's a lot of different technologies now that Business Central is up in the cloud that we get to take advantage of. First and foremost, we'll see some interconnectivity between Business Central and a variety of the different Office products. Excel is probably the most obvious one, and it's been around in a variety of different ways for many years. I think Rico shows a little bit of the Excel integration. I'll focus on what it looks like within the Office, the Outlook framework for you guys today. I will also show how Power BI as an extension of Office is used within Business Central to provide some pretty compelling reporting within the application that can take data sources from outside the application, which is a very interesting and unique concept that I think is really important for customers to understand. I will skip over some of the social side of things today. It's a fun one, but we're a little bit limited on time. But I do want to spend a decent amount of time and examples around Azure, and specifically Azure Machine Learning and Cognitive Services, because I think it's some of the more out there technology that is starting to make its way into the everyday use of the applications. And so I'm going to give you a couple of examples as to how we can use those tools to improve what we do within our ERP application, Business Central. You'll notice maybe on some of the screens that there's pre-integrated Power Apps and Flow for you to be able to develop your own simplistic applications and have them integrated workflow-wise back into Business Central as well. I don't focus on that today, but know that that is part of the overall suite. So on that note, let's get into the actual demonstration. So I'm going to start my day here within Office 365, at which point I can launch into any of the applications, the traditional ones that you see here, as well as Power BI directly, or in this case, Dynamics 365. That takes me to a second launching point. From within this particular area, I can go to our more traditional CRM applications on the right-hand side, or I can go directly into Business Central. Or based on my links and frequent usage, I can go directly to specific customers or sections from within Business Central. Just before I do that, I thought I would quickly give you a glimpse into that App Store that Tony had mentioned as part of his demonstration. So off that D365 homepage is where you launch into that App Store. Typically, you'd want to filter by the apps related to Business Central. And then you can see, as you kind of scroll through, all of the apps that are ultimately available to you to add on, and in many cases trial before you actually buy. I'll notice Avalara Tax Update is a very common one that we get from time to time. But from here, we will launch directly into Business Central and take a look at the homepage. While that renders, I'll bring up just to kind of prove the point around browsers. I will bring up Chrome. So right now I'm doing this demonstration using Edge. I'm just going to quickly copy that link and paste it into my Chrome browser so that we can take a look at how consistent the experience is. hopefully I got the right one. Demo password for everybody. Well, I'll show you that later as I kind of move through this. So I'll come back to that once I can get logged in. So a couple things on the homepage. Number one is insights from last week. So largely the system is pulling the data that is being processed on a regular basis, and it's pulling out the interesting facts about what happened within Business Central for the past week. So so we've closed 5 more deals than we did in the same period last year. We had the largest order kind of surface up to us, and so it gives it those interesting tidbits from our data from the previous week. We also have this new Intelligent Cloud Insights, which again, largely because the system is on the cloud, can start to use a lot of the AI processing behind the scenes to surface up new and interesting information from time to time. So every now and then you can go here and Microsoft will add on a regular basis some interesting information for you to be able to consume. So it's got some traditional KPIs on the right, but it will also tell you who's late in paying. I have 16 invoices that weren't paid on time by us. I do get some other interesting KPIs down at the bottom related to finance as well as my customers. Couple other things that are on the homepage as well. If we scroll to the bottom, I'm going to skip through a whole bunch of interesting stuff, but I want to get to the bottom because that is where we see Power BI reports rendered directly into the homepage of Business Central. And again, why this is important is because Power BI is ultimately becoming the go-forward industry standard business intelligence tool for the mid-market. And as such, unlike previous versions of NAV, the data and report writing function doesn't necessarily require expertise in the specific reporting tool that is native to NAV like it used to be. A typical Power BI user can start to develop those reports. So it makes that report writing task available to customers instead of Encore's partners. The other interesting fact about that is because it's Power BI and a business intelligence tool, I don't need to be confined to the data that is coming from my ERP application. I can take in other data sources, whether that be Dynamics CRM or maybe a line of business application that you've got deployed within your system. So my dashboard within Business Central then becomes one that is all-consuming, and again, not confined to the limits of the data within my ERP. So that's interesting that it's right on the homepage there, but it's also context sensitive as well. So if I go to my customers, we should see a list of them. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that you have pictures of all your customers, but you can do it. And you'll see that a Power BI report will start to render on the right-hand side. Oh, not rendering. It's referencing a different customer company, I think. Pardon me, it doesn't look like it's going to be friendly to me today. Anyway, typically what happens is based on the customer that you are on, it will change the content of that report to be filtered by that customer. We will shift over and go into some new stuff around inventory and what that looks like. Let me get back to the homepage. It's working hard on it. Let's see if I've got connection here too. Okay. Let me relaunch here. Let's see if it was having a problem with that one. There we go. So what I wanted to go into next were items and looking at a couple of interesting concepts within the item card. There we go. And so first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a quick search. And again, we don't have to, like in old versions of NAV, specify where we're searching. I didn't even have to actually hit enter. As I'm typing, it literally finds it, finds the chairs being part of the string of the actual description. But I could search for literally any field within the item card in order, and it would render the responses to me. So first of all, I mean, obviously we've got a nice graphical representation of our inventory, which is good. We also, as we go into say the London swivel chair blue, we can start to do a couple of things with it. Number one, get to the right spot here. Based on that picture, I can have Azure Machine Learning and Cognitive Services analyze the picture and return to me some attributes about that inventory item. This can be done on setup of your inventory as well. So if you do so through uploading pictures into the inventory, it can make some decisions for you as to how it should be categorized. So a couple of things that it did is it recognized it as a chair, and so it set up the category as chair. It also recognized that it's seat and a furniture. I can add that to the item description, so I can start to build out based on the picture what it looks like. A couple of the interesting things I liked was looking at all the attributes in the confidence score. So it also thought pretty sure that it was blue. So it was about 50% chance it was blue, but it decided to ignore that because its confidence wasn't high enough. The other one that I like in looking at this is it had a 4% chance, almost 5% chance that it was a drone. And if you look at it, it does kind of look like it could be a drone, but it wasn't sure enough, so it didn't suggest that as an attribute. So you can start to use those cloud-based services in order to supplement data entry and classify inventory without a human having to actually perform that function. Let's get back to the item list itself. A couple other things on the item list. You'll notice that we have, based on the record that we're on, a forecast for the item. This forecast is also taking data from Business Central, specifically the item ledger entries over a course of period of time, and it is sending that out to Azure Machine Learning and applying a variety of different inventory replenishment algorithms to it so that it can return to me a projection as to what my inventory balance is going to be, in this case, month over month. I'm currently working on a future date of, I think, April 4th, or maybe it's March 7th. And as I can see that by this time, right now I have 6, but by the same time the next month I should have 0, and then after that I'll have -7 a month later, and then only -10 a month later after that, and up to 16. So again, based on those patterns of consumption, it's going to suggest where my inventory is going to be. That's interesting information, but at the end of the day, we need that type of information to be actionable. And it is. So I can drop down that forecast and I can say, hey, I want you to create a purchase order for this item. Based on the setup of your inventory item card and the consumption that it looks like it has, it will come back and it will suggest that you buy 10 of these. Again, that's all very dependent on how you set up your item. The other thing that it will do, I didn't have any other inventory item, but doing a point-based replenishment really only buys that one item. If this vendor that I was now buying these blue armless swivel chairs from was also the primary vendor for additional items that were looking to be understocked, it would ask if I wanted to add these to the purchase order. Now that it's done that, by the way, I don't have to take the machine suggestion. I can, of course, make some changes to it as I see fit. I'm going to delete that so I can do this demonstration again without it messing up my suggestions. And we get back to the item list. The final thing I was going to show you was, again, that integration to Outlook. So I see I've got a couple of emails in my desktop version of Outlook. I'm going to select this one email that I got from my customer, Aaron Cameron, for order number 1004. So again, within the context of the email, I want to be able to typically do a few things with this particular email. One, I want to be able to assess it, and then after that, I want to be able to action it. Typically, that would require me to open up the ERP application, log in, navigate to the customer, look up their orders, or look up the list of orders, and then enter in the order number and find them. But because we are inherently connected to Business Central through our Office 365 account, we can do that without ever leaving the email itself. So by hitting Contact Insights, I get a view into the account card for Aaron and his company, which is Alpine Ski House. And as I do so, I can see that he's past due on some invoices to the tune of about $4,300. He has quite a few quotes ongoing with us, as well as sales orders, and quite a few posted invoices over the course of time as well. So he's been a decent customer for whatever reason. He's got this one balance that's now 3 years overdue, so quite a long way overdue. So I'm going to do some additional investigation into what this invoice is. I'm going to give myself a little bit more real estate so you can see. But it is interactive, so I can just simply click on that bar for 3 years. And here I can see it's actually just one invoice. It's not a bunch of them. It's only one. So I can do just like I do in regular NAV. I can navigate and surf through journal entries and tax ledger entries and whatnot. But typically, I'm going to want to go and see the actual posted invoice. I can see that this one, it was indeed done about 3 years ago, given that I'm working in 2020 today. And it was for a whole bunch of furniture that was ultimately delivered. It wasn't delivered to Aaron, it was delivered to a different rep, Paul. So I'm going to trust that Aaron's actually okay to pay the invoices, and I'm going to assume that that old order is something different. So the moment that I want to start actioning that, again, typically you'd log in and you'd go to the actual physical order and you'd make some decisions about it. Because we know the customer and we know the order number, we're able to do that again within the context of the email. And I'm going to have to sign in. Once you're signed in, typically you just click on it and it shows up. Now, again, without leaving the email, I see the actual order itself, and I can see that it is for some Mexican swivel chairs, and he's asking for 3. So I'm going to say, all right, I will give you 3. And just for fun, let's just enter in 100. So the reason I did that is I wanted to kind of action a trigger from within the system. So this is not a dumb form that is embedded within the email. This is actually directly connected to the business logic of Business Central. As I entered 100, it checked inventory and it told me that, hey, you don't actually have 100 at this location in order to sell them. So it's not that I submit the order and then find out later that I don't have inventory. It is actively telling me that I've got issues. So we'll change that back to 3. I'll get rid of the error message there. And then typically what happens at that point, we would want to get the order approved, release it, send Aaron back an email confirmation. We can do all of those types of things, including, there you go, the approval requests. Again, integrated to Flow if there were some custom flows that you wanted to build into this process as well. Typically, email confirmation tends to be the best one. And that'll send out a fresh email to Aaron for asking him for final approval. Renders that sales order as a PDF. It's going to be the standard one, but it'll do that all for you based on how you've got it configured and set up. And away you go. You can go ahead and submit that order over to Aaron. Close it, and you're done for the day again without ever having left the email. That was about the extent of what I was going to show in terms of new functionality. So I believe at this point we are handing over to Rico. Not quite ready yet for Rico. Might be some other things I can show in Business Central. If you need a little bit more time, Rico, let me know.
Okay. Yes, we are. So I just unmute myself. Sorry. I was talking to myself for a couple of minutes. Okay, so I'm going to show you more practical parts on the Business Central, or formerly known as NAV clients. So I have a small agenda here. So the first part will be on the web client, because as we heard from Tony, this is the clients to go in in the next versions. And then I also will show you some useful functions which are available in the RTC as well. And then there are some future further new features, and I will just highlight them on a slide. So the web client is the next new client. So, but the RTC is still available. So don't get scared. It's not going away that fast, but you will have some time to continue on the web client. So what is one improvement on the web client? The first one is we have updated keyboard shortcuts. In the previous versions, we had no shortcuts. So what you had to do is all manual in the web client. Now you can use stuff that you already know, like copy paste with Control-C, Control-V. You have the F8 key to copy the value from the cell above. You have filters and all this nice stuff that you already know from the RTC. The next part is an optimized search. In the web client, you have, so when in the RTC, you have the search box into the top right corner. And when you search, you will find a ton of results. The search in Business Central now is way more advanced. So for example, if you are in the customer cart and you search for customer, it will tell you, hey, you have some insights right here in the customer cart. So this is the first part of my screenshot. So you can see what's happening on the customer card, which is tied to the keyword customer. Then you have the old way search results, like customers, customer template, price groups, and so on. And then they also have some reports which are highlighted for you. So this is pretty nice, especially for new users to actually find stuff very easily. This will be your best friend, I assume, if you're a new user. A next thing which is really important and that it's coming into the web client is the actual filtering list. Because when you were filtering in the previous versions, you could filter on one value. But what you couldn't do is filter on multiple fields at the same time, and you couldn't also filter on flow fields. So imagine you were in a chart of account and now you want to filter on a date filter. This wasn't possible in the web client before, now it is. So pretty much the same experience as you have in the RTC. And then again, I told you already, you have the copy and paste rows. In the previous version, we had a thing which were similar to copy and paste because you could export to Excel, then do all your data in Excel and then publish it into Business Central again. Now it's as easy as copy and paste with Control-C, Control-V. And as I told you before, we also have the copy function of the key F8, which allows you to copy the value from the cell above, which is really a value that we have it already. This is what I have from my web client. So I think the most important part for you is the RTC, because I think most of you are still using the RTC. So I think I will just demo the stuff in the RTC, some of it. Have to have a look on the time as well. So let's see where we get. So the first thing is we have a new improved data entry in journals. So I call it like document type journals. So before you had one journal with multiple document numbers, now you can kind of group them. So let's open the RTC. You can see it's still there. It's pretty much the same. Let's see if we can find a journal. We have a journal over here. I open this one, the default one, added the journal. And this is the way you all are used to it. And now I can use the show fewer fields. And what it will do for me, it will group it by document, posting date, and currency code, and it will remove some columns in the bottom. So now you have everything that's connected to this one document. Because you could have multiple documents within one journal, you can skip to the previous and to the next document number. It's pretty neat if you want to enter multiple documents in the same time in the same journal and have already the balance if every document number is balanced out. I totally like this new functionality here. And as you can see, it was optional, so you don't have to use it if you don't like it for some reason. The next feature is blocked items are not visible in sales and purchase orders anymore, which is a good thing because sometimes you select an item, then you get a message, oh, this item is blocked, you can't use it. Why do I see it in the first place, right? So now they get rid of this item, so you can't see it in the documents, but you can still see it in the item list because you need a place to block it and unblock it, obviously. So this, the advantage is that supports the user of selecting the proper items, and it avoids wrong data entries. The next thing, which is pretty similar to the service item, is the non-inventory item. So before we had, so in the past, we had only items. Whenever you post an item, you had inventory affected, you had quantity on hand, and this sometimes was a bit stupid because you sold like services and you used an item for some reason for this, and then you had the negative quantity on hand. Before, Microsoft introduced the service item, and now we also have the non-inventory item, which is an item, for example, what you can sell, but what you don't purchase in on an item level. Maybe you buy it on a bulk level or on a GL level, or you produce it, manufacture it, whatever. And the same thing, like for service items, it doesn't calculate the quantity on hand in your item card. A thing that was already implemented in NAV 2018 was the employee ledgers and the payments. So when you go back to your client, oops, let me show the client. I can go to, oh, actually, I was at the journals. You could create a general journal, which is for travel expenses. Then you can edit the journal, and then you have, oh, show more columns. You have one more account type. So our account type that we have now is the employee. And we have this drop down. This is a new entry here, and the employee actually allows you to post ledgers against your employee, and you can pay your employee directly. So what is the advantage? Imagine a situation when you have set up your employee as a vendor, and you don't want to pay the expenses to your employee, but you don't want your purchasing guys to see all the expenses that were paid to your boss, to whomever in the company. So this was kind of an issue because you couldn't prevent to see some vendors for these guys, and some others are allowed to be visible. So now you can really distinct it. So you can say employee are only available for finance for whomever, and the actual vendors are the data entries for your purchasing guys. So this is a cool thing, and which is really secure because it's in different tables. Everything is different, and you can set different permissions based on these tables and pages. And what happens is when you post a journal like this, you can go to your employee, and actually yesterday, what? I'm still on. Oh. Yeah, I'm still on. What you can see here is you can find your ledgers. Actually, where's my ledger entries button? Here. And you can see that I posted some ledger entries for a hotel for this guy here, and she needs to be paid $132. And the next thing which is integrated is obviously the payment in your payment journal. In your payment journals, you have this nice functionality of suggest vendor payments. I think you already know this functionality because it was here like forever. And now you have the suggest employee payments, which is pretty much the same. So you can suggest vendor payments, all due payments. You can filter on employee. You can, summarize per employee. You can pay it separately, whatever you want. So pretty much the same as you have for vendor payments, but from a separate table. So it's all secure. Nobody can see if you don't want them to see that. There's one limitation which you should be aware of. It doesn't calculate sales taxes. So this is kind of not a nice feature, but you can still work around because you can use the journal to actually calculate the taxes. And then there's one more thing, which is kind of my favorite in the NAV 2008 version, which is the dimension filter builder. So before, when you were in a chart of accounts, what you could filter on were your 2 global dimensions. Right now, you can build a filter based on whatever you want. So you can filter your sales by, let's say, a sales campaign from last winter, and then you can see all your ledgers which are connected to these sales campaigns, no matter what other dimension combinations there were. So this is really a nice thing, because before you had to actually create an analysis by dimensions, and then you had to create an account schedule to actually filter and view all this data, and now you can do it right away in your chart of accounts. And then one more tool, which I already mentioned, was the Edit in Excel functionality. What you can do is you can export from your Business Central into Excel, and your Excel pops up. You can enter all the data, and then you can hit the button in the bottom of Excel, say Publish, and then all the data from the Excel file will get published to your Business Central. We'll run all the business logic, make sure that all the information is valid, and then you can go back and actually post your journal in this case. Yeah, that's about it on my demonstration. I hope you enjoyed some of the new features, and yeah, I hope you have some questions.
Great, thank you, Rico. We've got a few minutes left, so we'll open the floor up if anyone has any questions. And if nobody has any questions, then we'll be able to give everyone 5 minutes back. Tess, is it open so people can speak, or are they going to type in their questions?
If anyone has any questions, they can raise their hand and I can unmute them, or they could type their questions into the side pane.
Awesome. Thanks, Tess.
No.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone, for participating. It's great to see so many people online watching this webinar. It'll be recorded and put up on our website, so you can consume it at your leisure. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to Rico, myself, or Tony, and we look forward to helping you on your journey to D365 Business Central. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Do you have a question?
Sorry,
Yeah, there was a question that came in.
Okay.
So does it work for internal approvals as well, rather than just confirming an order?
Is that from Aaron's?
I think it's going to Aaron's area, right?
Yeah, so that is the approval process that you saw there is the traditional and the standard one. That is an internal routing process, typically based on dollar amount of the user that is trying to update the order. So based on those rules, you can route that internally within your organization for an approval of that order before it is set to released status within Business Central. Hopefully that answers the question.
Just one addition here. If you want, you could also create an external flow, which is the Microsoft Flow thing, which allows you also to push it out externally. But so the approval buttons you could see and which are already built are only the within Business Central. But you can extend it to the flow if you want.
Any other questions?
Yeah, another one.
Perfect.
We are NAV 16 on-prem. How can I obtain a download and try it out?
In terms of Business Central, the SaaS offering, you can easily spin up a trial and give it a go. If you are on plan with Microsoft, if your enhancement has been paid, you can download or you have access to download the Business Central on-prem and install that and give that a try. You'd have to use the demo license file that comes with it, because otherwise you have to transition your license file, which you won't want to do until you're definitely kind of migrating. But those are two options that could give you access to Business Central SaaS as well as Business Central on-prem for a trial.
Yeah, if you just Google D365 BC trials, and actually there's a direct link, or if you would like the link, I can send it to you. Just pop me an email.
We can't see the questions here, Tess, so if you see them, if you could shout them out, that'd be great.
Yep, we just have another one here. Are there any resources for using the BI reports?
So the BI reports that I showed or just briefly showed are the ones that are kind of built out of the box from Microsoft. So they tend to be food for thought for an organization. In almost every case, organizations will take the Power BI views and kind of create some of their own, either by changing the ones that are provided by Microsoft or just building brand new Power BI reports that are relevant to their business and their configuration. So what you see in the demonstration is really more a representative example. Sometimes there are pieces that clients will actually like to use in that. I did a demo this morning whereby I took actual data in Business Central and kind of made it represent quite nicely my sales over the course of time, as well as the types of products that I was ultimately selling, and it did a half-decent job of kind of picking that up. So they are getting better, but most clients will make them their own anyway.
Cool.
That's all for questions that I can see.
Okay, perfect.
Great. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, Rico. Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thanks,
Have a
everyone.
great day, everybody.